welcome to another episode of Club and Resort Talks. Today's episode is sponsored by Texacraft. Texacraft has been an outdoor commercial furniture leader since 1975. For more than 40 years, they've been a trusted and reliable source for country clubs and resorts. Texacraft is committed to not only providing a quality product, but a quality experience for all customers. They don't just take pride in what they do, they take pride in how they do it. Learn more at texacraft.com. Got that out of the way. Let me introduce you to Phil Keren, our senior editor. Phil, how's it going?
I'm doing well, Rob. How are you?
Terrific. Weather's turning here, hopefully in Northeast Ohio and elsewhere in the country. Let's get on the golf course.
I know. How about that? Well, as we know, this time of year here in February for us in Ohio, it's really just a tease. We know it's gonna turn back the other way. Unfortunately, we're not quite there to turn the corner yet. But yeah, it did make you think about getting on the golf course this week for sure.
Yeah, really, April 1st is when we're starting April Fool's Day, unfortunately. April 1st when we start really thinking about golf. So the rest of February and March, we're in the crosshairs, unfortunately, for a foot of snow. It could happen anytime.
It could. It could. So far, knock on wood, we've been very fortunate this winter. But yeah, we know anytime the weather could turn at any moment. It always keeps us on our toes, right?
Yeah, it does. It's making us strong. So
That's right.
what are you seeing in the news?
Well, and with that in mind, as we're still in the winter, I know we've had some nice weather this week, but I know we're probably going to get back to the more the doldrum winter. I thought I'd keep things on a real positive note as far as stories this week and focus on that kind of stuff. For one, we've been talking about paddle and pickleball and the various racket sports that are becoming more popular with clubs around the country. Thought I'd mention one. This week we had a story, a place called Paddle plus Pickle, Paddle and Pickle in Olivette, Missouri, which is about 12 miles from St. Louis. They're going to be opening a site with both paddle and pickleball courts on February 24th and 25th. Some opening events there. They're going to have clinics, private lessons, leagues, open play, tournaments, kids club. The founder of it, Mike Puertas, said his vision was twofold: to introduce these thrilling racket sports to our community and provide a hub for enthusiasts to come together, connect, and elevate their passion for the game. So that looks like a great start. I'm noticing that too with more places where they're trying to, it's not just about the sport, it's also kind of providing a gathering place for people, sort of a community place for people to connect with one another and make connections in other parts of life too.
Yeah, it's terrific. Paddle, we've heard about pickleball now for a couple of years,
Yes.
really since the beginning of COVID. Paddle's really picking up. And we just, our last podcast, we had Santiago Gomez, probably pronounced better. And he was Pickle House from Brooklyn. Now he's going down to Nashville, and they're going to be expanding nationally. So paddle's growing. Looking forward to seeing more clubs getting into paddle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It should be interesting to see what happens with that organization out there in Missouri. Turning to some other good news, Mineola Country Club in Mineola, Texas. I know we had a story last summer. They unfortunately saw their clubhouse burn down last August. But the good news now, flash forward here to January 31st, they had a group of board and building committee members of the club. They had a groundbreaking ceremony. They are planning to rebuild the clubhouse on the same site of the building that unfortunately burned down last summer, building on the same site. They're working on those plans. It's expected to take about 9 months to rebuild. The board president, he had said, when it had happened back in the summer, he said, I know no idea what was next. Didn't know where to start. And today, through our membership, through our community, and through just support, we're fixing to rebuild. And I think that was just a great story. I was reading a little bit about that club too. I guess they've had other struggles throughout their history, and the club president was kind of indicating that this is just another example, though, of a great spirit of the board members and the members themselves of the club working together to make something happen and to revive the clubhouse down there in Mineola.
Yeah, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, right? And I don't know why Mineola makes me think of Minnesota. but maybe it's Minneapolis. Maybe there's a Mineola in Minnesota, but does not sound like a Texas town to me.
No, it doesn't. You're right. It's true. I had to kind of double check that before we came on here to make sure I was getting the state correct on that one. But yes, it's a great story. I know they've had actually that was the other thing. Yes, the club president had mentioned yes, they've had a lot of they've had almost a 100-year history out there. So, Great Depression, World War II, droughts, and of course most recently COVID. Um they struggled through a lot of challenges through the years, but again, it's a strong group down there that want to make sure their club continues for many years. So great story to see.
Keep plugging away.
Absolutely. The other one I was going to mention today, story wise, was the down in Florida, Vero Beach, Florida, Orchid Island Golf and Beach Club just finished a big renovation to their Arnold Palmer Championship golf course. Actually, as I understand it from the story, we had the most significant one they've had since the course was first constructed back in 1990. And it was Brandon Johnson. He's a golf course architect for Arnold Palmer Design Company. They worked on it, worked on a project involving greens, tees, bunkers, short game area, driving range. Biggest design changes they mentioned were to the ninth hole, lowered the fairway, removed bunkers to provide a better view of the lake down there, which is also interesting because again another touched on that theme before of bunkers being removed from golf courses. It seems like it's happening more. Also, the fifth hole on the green was moved a little bit to shorten the hole. Seventh hole had the green contouring modified a little bit. 13th hole also changed in the green contouring, and the 18th hole had a reshaping of the green and the bunkering around it. So nice to see a big project out there. And also from the environmental standpoint, they are a certified Audubon sanctuary course, and so they're committed to preserving the wildlife that is found down there in Vero Beach. So good stuff to see.
Yeah, I love anything that includes the Audubon
Mhm.
certified sanctuary. Environment's huge, and I spoke with somebody at the recent GCSAA conference and trade show about it as well. And while we're talking about Florida, I had mentioned earlier too that Gainesville Country Club was recently auctioned for I think a little more than $2 million. Conversely, now Atlanta, there's an Atlanta club, the Country Club of Gwinnett, that's going up for auction. I believe March 20th it'll be up for auction, but March 18th is when the online bidding starts, and it's only going to start at $650,000. So when you look at the 2 million plus for Gainesville Country Club, that's $650,000 for the Country Club of Gwinnett in Snellville, Georgia. Seems like a real bargain, huh?
It does. It does sound like a bargain. That's interesting to notice that. And so that's an online be an auction. What goes over a couple days? Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I think it starts. So it starts on the 18th, March 18th, and the official auction will be the 20th, I guess, when they make the decision who's going to be getting it. Hopefully, it goes to somebody who wants to keep it a golf course, and not somebody who wants to redevelop it into a shopping mall or homes. That's hey, it's up to them. If they own the property, they own the property. If it's zoning is okay for it, but being golfers, we want to see golf courses.
Absolutely right. I was thinking the same thing. That's always the interesting issue with those when there's a property goes up for auction like that. Um, Obviously, highest best bidder gets it, and but you do of course run the risk that it may not be a golf course or a club or that kind of facility anymore. We of course in our world, yes, we're hoping that it continues to be that way, and hopefully it works out that way for the folks there in Georgia.
Well, you and I are both newspaper guys in the past, and we know all about zoning boards. And if it's not
Yes.
zoned residential or zoned commercial, then there's a good chance it's going to stay a golf course, or at least some kind of more environmentally friendly thing, a park or something along that line. I'd much rather see it a park than townhomes. But again, that's me. It's not my money. It's just my desire.
Right, right. That brings up a point too that sometimes, yes, that again, that will work in the favor of maintaining it as a golf course or something like that. Indeed, right. Zoning, it is true. Zoning laws get interesting to. It's interesting to learn about that stuff because it actually really affects our way, what we're doing in our lives and what can be built here and there. And a lot of times that does dictate whether something gets to remain a golf course or not. And actually, in that case, it does kind of work in that favor because oftentimes that zoning, it may be restricted to, again, a golf course type use, or like you said, a park or some kind of preserved area rather than, say, building a bunch of townhomes or condominiums.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, speaking of zoning and government regulations, I am sure that your interview that's coming right up, they had to go through quite a bit of with the planning commission. We're talking about lighting a golf course. We have an update, I believe, on a previous article and podcast. Can you tell us a little something about what people can expect to watch next?
Absolutely, Rob. Yeah, I had a chance recently to catch up with Pete Wilson. He's co-founder of Grass Clippings. And actually, I should mention very quickly about that. That company was actually founded, it was he and a group of friends, longtime friends, I believe, got together. And that's actually, Grass Clippings is actually an apparel company, which shines a spotlight on the folks who work on golf courses, your superintendents, your director of agronomy, your the greenskeepers, the people who are doing the work, the blood, sweat, and tears of maintaining golf courses at country clubs and golf clubs throughout the country. So that's how it started. They're doing that, and they still very much are continuing that operation as well. Well, what they did most recently was they got together and they um, signed a 50-year lease with the city of Tempe, Arizona. They took over operations of Rolling Hills Golf Course out there in Tempe. And yes, I am sure they went through a lot of different government meetings, planning commission type meetings, zoning board, what have you, to get all this together because on December 1st of this past year, they opened a golf course reopened the golf course at Rolling Hills. By day, it's an 18-hole executive golf course. At night, though, it's an 18-hole par three course. That's right. Nighttime, it's the only lighted golf course in the state of Arizona. I know in talking to Pete, there were times that I think they felt like it wasn't going to happen. It was a very long process to make it happen. Only lighted golf course in the state of Arizona. They've now been open for about 2 months. So it seemed like a great time to catch up with him. And I mentioned this before we jumped on that so far, this is my favorite interview that I've done here on Club and Resort Talks. Fantastic conversation.
Well, our buddy Chris Strauss from Troon was just posted something on LinkedIn about the good tournament that they had at
Yes.
Rolling Hills. So Rolling Hills?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct. It's rolling. Yes, Rolling Hills. I had
Yeah, I
double
almost
checked
said
that
Rolling
myself.
Acres. I don't know why, but yeah,
Yes.
Rolling Hills. So we've been familiar with this for a while now, and I believe this is going to be on it's on TV, so people can watch it. And you mentioned that in your podcast as well. So
Yes.
good stuff coming out, and we've talked before that. Now December, January, February is great for night golf, but down in Arizona, June, July, August, September, that's when they're really gonna be a benefit to the society down there. So God bless them.
Yes, absolutely. It's exciting stuff. And I think the other thing you'll hear Pete mention too is they're really trying to um it kind of goes along with the night golf, just to try to he and his group, his business partners and friends are very committed to making golf a very inclusive game. They're very much about growing the game and making it something that's welcoming to everybody. And you'll hear him talk about that too in the conversation.
All right, terrific. Enough about you and me. Let's get to Pete.
Well, welcome back to Club and Resort Talks. Last September, we visited with Pete Wilson. He's co founder of Grass Clippings. Clippings was a company that Pete founded with a group of friends. The company signed a 50-year lease with the city of Tempe, Arizona, to take over all operations at Rolling Hills Golf Course in Tempe. We visited with Pete, as I mentioned last September. Since then, December 1st, Grass Clippings opened a golf course at Rolling Hills in Tempe. By day, Rolling Hills is an 18-hole executive golf course. By night, Rolling Hills is an 18-hole par 3 course. That's right, you heard, by night. Rolling Hills is the only lighted 18-hole golf course in the state of Arizona, and it's one of only about 20 or so lighted golf courses in the United States. It's exciting stuff, for sure. And now that it's been a couple months since the opening, we wanted to check back in to see how everything was going. So once again, I'm joined by Pete Wilson, co-founder of Grass Clippings. Pete, welcome back to Club and Resort Talks.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be back on.
Great to have you back. And actually, for the record, I don't know, my coworker, co-host on this, Rob Thomas, also interviews folks from time to time. I don't know if he's had a repeat guest yet, but you have the honor of being my first repeat guest on Club and Resort Talk. So congratulations on that.
Well, I'm honored to be here.
Excellent. So great to have you back. And for the benefit, I know we talked in September, we talked about the formation of your company and how you got into taking over operations at Rolling Hills Golf Course. But for the benefit of folks who perhaps didn't get to hear that first podcast, maybe just have you sort of briefly retell the story of how Grass Clippings got started and then how that's now led to operating Rolling Hills Golf Course in Tempe.
It was a really organic way of a company coming together. It was a group of friends, best friends that all have had been heavily impacted by the game of golf. We all grew up playing golf at 3 years old, and there was something instilled in us in that culture and that community of golf that we just always kept with us. We were off doing other jobs, and something struck us. We were like, one of our co-founders, Jimmy Hazelton, was playing professional golf, and you always see guys standing on the first tee. And I mentioned this in our last interview. It's guys wearing a TaylorMade hat or a Ping hat or this and that. Nothing against those companies. They're great companies. But in terms of like golf, if you understand golf from a golfer's perspective, when you put on a hat and you go out and play in a big tournament, that hat means something, and it better mean something, because that could be the difference between winning and losing. So we wanted to create a clothing brand and inspire young golfers, old golfers to play for something. We always say play for the shop. That's what we say, because we have our retail store in Arcadia. So in thinking of, what really impacted us the most throughout our journey in golf is we always thought about the conversations we had with greenskeepers in the maintenance shed, having coffee, going to talk to them about the golf course. And it was so odd to us that these greenskeepers were the ones that were doing all the work on the golf course, showing up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. and staying till, our greenskeepers. I mean, I don't even know if he goes home at this point. It's so inspiring in the work they do. We were just gravitated toward that whole notion of these guys are the real heroes, the unsung heroes, and no one ever talks about them. They're typically off in the distance, hit behind oleanders or something, and they're kind of these mystical creatures. And we were like, why are we not celebrating these people? So we created a company called Grass Clippings. Our slogan is "Stay Grassy." And in tandem with doing that, we created a golf tournament. And we sat down at the table and we said, we've been to certain golf tournaments that are incredible. There's a culture to them. I can list a handful of them, but there really isn't that many here in Arizona. Obviously we have the Phoenix Open, but that's the top of the professional ranks. But for amateur golfers and your everyday golfers, there really isn't this kind of rallying cry of a tournament that brings everyone together. So we sat down and we came together and we said, you don't want to show up at a course and be given 10 strokes to somebody. It just takes the competitive nature out of it. But at the same time, there is a gap between talent. So how do we get everyone on the same playing field and get everyone having shared excitement, shared enthusiasm for the competition? And what we settled on was a par 3 course, 2-man scramble. And we put this tournament on, and a community was built out of that. It was, one of our best friends, he has it starred on his calendar every year. He's like, all I got to do is get ready for the Grass Clippings Open. And that just we started to see something forming and building. And the course we did it at, we were always constrained on what we could do in terms of, we were rushed off the course because of sunlight. There was residential homes right there. So we couldn't put up grandstands, or we couldn't do this. We couldn't bring in TV crews or anything like that. So knowing this and really inspired and led by the idea that we wanted to grow this community, we went out looking for a golf course that we could either buy and build or take over on a lease and put improvements into. And there was this diamond in the rough, a gem of a property in Tempe, Arizona, down the street from where we live. it had not gotten, in our opinion, as much love as it should have from, you know, and there were some great employees here, but as an overall, you know, these golf courses, a lot goes into it. And so
Mhm.
there were some things that could be improved. And one of those things was building a really strong community, and inspiring young players, of all demographics and even older players to come get into the game of golf and embrace it. And that led us to, approaching the city of Tempe. There was an RFP process and we won the lease agreement, for 50 years at, Grass Clippings Rolling Hills now. And, couldn't be more excited.
Now, that is exciting for sure. Definitely. And but you know what? Before we get into the night golf aspect of this, talk a little bit about, and you were starting to touch on it a little bit in your answer. Talk a little bit about the sort of unique atmosphere and culture you're trying to create out there at Rolling Hills Golf Course, and maybe how it runs a little bit counter to what traditional approaches to golf are. We talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked at golf courses, you know, in my past life, you know, and, I've obviously been to a lot of golf courses, and nothing against any other golf course, but it's a lot of the same. And what we really wanted to do, and this is, you know, this extends beyond golf. This is just life, is you want to employ people and empower them and make them feel like they own their sandbox, and they're at liberty to make decisions. And when you do things like that, and you want to see the growth in your employees to, you know, if they go on to another job and a bigger and better job, that's good. That's a good thing. And it's the culture that the ownership's here for them, and they're here for us. And we empower them to, you know, we got Don Hess as our director of agronomy. Brian Bennett is our sales events marketing. He's got too many titles to name. Mikey is our outside service, guy, but he's got 16 different titles too. And they all feel like this is their home. Scotty, our superintendent, he has full control on the golf course. We don't get in his grill and ever do that. And he's created a culture in the maintenance shed with his crew that is nothing short of inspiring. It's unbelievable. And there's this, I hate to use the word synergy because it's always used too much, but there's this synergy between all employees that everyone's bought into a collective vision and everyone knows they have each other's back. And when you do that, it reflects upon the customer, upon the people walking to the pro shop. They can feel that. And it's a big reason why we have repeat customers now, is because, you know, they understand we're still under construction, but they're like, you know what, I just want to be around the culture, and around the people around here. And it just, it takes me back to, like, you know, small town golf. You know, I used to spend my summers up in a small town in Minnesota, and there was something so unique, so authentic about the culture, the people, the experiences. And that's what we're trying to emulate here. And, that, you know, it's really special. And we're only as good as our employees, and we did a really good job of finding the right people.
Excellent. Sounds wonderful. One thing now, I guess then too, though, let's talk a little bit now about the course itself. Tell us a little bit about the layout of the course and kind of what challenges it presents for golfers at whatever level they're at.
Yeah. So, one of the big things with, the city of Tempe going back and forth was, you know, they're very, conscious about, the water situation here in Arizona. So, you know, turf reduction, was a big thing. And the amount of water we were using. So the goal was to come in here and was to rapidly, improve the greens, the fairway approaches, and the tee boxes. And Scotty has done an incredible job. Like I said in our last time we called, Scott Hebert came from, TPC Scottsdale. So he is, it's unbelievable he's here. We pinch ourselves every day. And he's done what he always does. So, you know, all of the green surface areas are incredible. But with all that construction that went on when he was doing overseed, we had cranes driving out here through the golf course to put up light poles. So there were certain areas that, you know, got beat up. And so what he's done now is he's restoring the earth. he's been I forget the term, tilling it, and it's bringing up all these rocks that then we're going to improve and make more aesthetically pleasing and playable. But it's very much a work in progress with everything we have going on. You know, our hope was when we were going down this road was to not have to do this process where we're doing work and running an operation. But so many people call this home that we were like, we'll do it. So it's a mixture of, you know, construction's going on, there's moving parts and all that. But from a playability perspective, you know, the greens are, I get goosebumps. I'm looking at them right now. It's unbelievable. He's done an incredible job. And it's only going to get better. And it's a fun golf course to play. At night, it's like I said, it's a par 3 course, but it's a challenging par 3 course. This is a course that's going to hold up with some of the best players in the world. So, but at the same time, if you're just getting into the game, you can enjoy this just as much.
Excellent. That's great to hear. And I know that's part of what your philosophy is too. You're trying to really have the game be for everybody out there, for sure, right?
Yeah. In the end, and the way I look at it is like, you know, for instance, on Wednesday, and we'll get into this, you know, Michael Block will be out here playing golf in a tournament. And the idea that the vision we have is like, imagine Michael Block standing next to a kid who's from Tempe, who's never played golf before. And you have him trying to encourage him to get into the game and, hey, put your hands back a little bit. Don't putt like this. Don't do that. That is when you're growing the game, you're taking the top of, you know, the top 1% of the professional golfers and the people that have never played before and blending them into the same scene, and both are respected equally. That's truly growing the game. And that, yeah, that like you said, it's big in our philosophy.
Right. I was struck by actually getting ready for this interview last night. I was watching a video. You were talking about the idea that oftentimes I never heard it framed this way, but I thought that's so true. I've also grown up with golf and played all throughout my life. The golf is very much a game of, there's a lot of no's in golf. You want to have more yeses. And I know what you mean. I feel like I remember when I was on the golf course with my dad the first time, it's always this and that. Oh, no talking, you know, don't walk in that guy's line. Don't, you know, don't put your bag there. You got to put it there. This, you know, a lot of no's are going on, which, and that's fine. There's a lot of rules and we understand that and appreciate it. But it's sort of, it was interesting to hear how you're trying to approach this of offering a place where more yeses are happening than no's than typically happen at golf courses, I guess, right?
Yeah, and believe me, we are purists of the game, you know, golf purists, and we respect the traditions of the game more than anything. But
Sure.
to an extent, it gets a little crazy where people, you know, walk out on a putting green. I read a tweet from a golf journalist the other day where he's out on a putting green, and his son wasn't wearing a collared shirt, and his son's like 4 years old, and he asked the pro asked them to leave, and I thought to myself, I'm like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And so it's, again, I get goosebumps thinking about the traditions of golf, but you gotta, you know, have a rational mind and say just some stuff's a little overboard.
Right. Gotta let common sense still make its way into our top of mind, if you will.
Exactly.
Yeah. So on the night golf, though, more itself, let's get more in the specifics about that, Pete. So the course itself, so when is it sunset then? Essentially the course transitions into being the nighttime setup. Can you talk about how that works a little bit?
Yeah, it's so we typically turn the lights on at you know, 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, just, you know, an hour or two before it gets dark, just to make sure the lights are on. But you can play it as an executive course until it gets dark, until the lights come on, and then we have our rangers going out and moving the tee boxes or the tee markers to the par 3 tee boxes at the appropriate time. So it kind of transitions naturally. But it's funny you say that, thinking about a tee sheet. What we've come to find is that I attest to it. It's my favorite time to play, and other people have shared the same sentiment. Is, you know, on your typical golf course, you run off the golf course at sunset. We have the ability where people are teeing off at sunset, And the first 6 holes they're playing amongst a beautiful sunset over South Mountain over here. I mean, every day it sets up just incredible. And then as the sun sinks below the horizon, you're now under lights playing in the dark. So it's a really cool experience, and we found that those tee times have been extremely popular amongst players.
Right. You mean specifically the tee times that are happening right around that sunset and just after, I'm guessing,
Yeah.
right?
It depends on the time of year, but like right now, it's the anywhere from the 3:30 to the 5:30 block of tee times are really popular.
So, okay. I saw on the website nighttime golf right now, it's sunset to midnight are the hours essentially. Is that correct?
Yeah, for night golf. I mean,
For
so
night
the
golf,
tee sheet
right?
opens up in the morning, just
Mhm.
like any other golf course,
Sure.
depending on time of year, 7 a.m., 8 a.m., all the way to we turn the lights off at midnight. And the last tee time you can get is a 9-hole tee time at 9:50 p.m.
Okay. Okay. So that's the last one there. What can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit? Because that's obviously that's a whole different world to us here in the United States as far as having regular night golf 7 days a week and everything. What kind of went into the decision about what the hour, the hours are essentially sunset to midnight. So how did you guys figure that out as being the hours at this point?
Well, we turned on the lights when in the winter, so that we were kind of limited on the amount of sun. So we figured we try to extend the hours as much as possible. We inked it as 11 p.m. and internally some people were like, no one's gonna come play golf at so and so time and be up that late. And we were, those comments were quickly turned into a different conversation. So it's been much of a process, but the popularity and the demand for the product has been so well received that we're now open till midnight every night.
Okay, excellent. And also, so far, then I think you've already heard you mentioning that you having repeat customers and everything. Um, Talk about feedback. First of all, I assume you've received a lot of positive feedback from players, and if so, maybe talk about specifically what they like about the nighttime golf setup and the course itself, of course.
Yeah, well, it's a couple things. I mean, this property is very unique in the sense that the topography, is off the charts. The elevation changes throughout the golf course, makes it challenging and fun. Um, and then now the conditions are so much better on the greens and the surrounding areas, the tee boxes and everything. And then the novelty of golf. I sat up here at our restaurant the other night talking to a teacher from a local high school here, and he's like, I gotta tell you, it was at 8 p.m. He's like, I gotta tell you, this is really a game changer for me. And I was like, what do you mean by that? He's like, just the fact that, I just put my kids down and my wife's still at home and she let me come out here and I'm hitting balls and I'm talking to you, I'm chipping, I'm putting, and I'm probably not going to go home for another hour or two. He's like, it's not just a novelty, but it's actually, I don't want to say changing people's lives, but it's offering, a source of happiness and enjoyment for a lot of people. And and that's huge. So the ability to play at night is really, really special. But to be honest, I think the resounding response we get is less about golf at all. It's about the culture. It's about the people. They just want to sit around and hang. Most people just show up and hang out in our pro shop to talk to our employees. Again, it goes back to not only our philosophy, but hiring the right people and having people on property that share the same vision. And buy into it, and we're all on the same team. Again, that's reflected to the customer. So I really think that's the biggest part beyond the night golf.
Right. That's the draw, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. And then talk about too. It's been a couple months now with night golf. Maybe talk about some of the special events you've hosted out there.
Yeah, we've had a ton of events, and we have a ton of events coming up. You know, First and foremost, when we took over the golf course, there was no junior programming. There was, um, there wasn't anybody teaching lessons or anything like that. It was kind of sad to me to think that this property wasn't encouraging young people to get into the game. So we had a woman, a girls junior event with over like 100 players out here. One Saturday morning, the girls AGAA fantastic people, came out here and held a huge event for all these young girls, and they all loved it. And some had been playing for a while, some it was their first time, and the response was, I can't wait to come back and do this again. This is incredible. So that like warms my heart just to start. It's like, you know, we're starting to make those strides to do the things that we were committed to from the beginning. Another great event was actually was Tuesday night of this week. The Greenskeeper Association's been in town for their conference, and a guy named Brian Laurent, who runs a company called Superintendent Network. And he essentially is like a journalist that documents the work of superintendents. And he does an incredible job, and he's created such a unique network of greenskeepers. They all came out and played in a tournament out here. They took over the course at night. They started tee off. It was a shotgun at 6:30. And our greenskeeper played in it. And to be honest, I think that was the moment where everything kind of hit. You know, we've been doing a lot of stuff out here. We've talked to a lot of people, and a lot of cool things are going on. But to be honest, even with the big events we have coming up, the Superintendent Network event is like, it gives me goosebumps. Like, it could make me cry, because that's why we started this whole thing like this. And they're all out here, and you have every superintendent walking up and saying, you know, thank you so much for what you're doing and bringing us into the light. And then looking at Scotty and saying, Scotty, you're doing a phenomenal job, and all that stuff. So it was a real, you know, full circle event that gives me goosebumps.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, we you know, we have our first televised event on NBC Peacock coming on February 7th, this coming week, with a laundry list of celebrities and things like that. It's pretty crazy. You know, I didn't think these things were going to be happening this quickly. We always knew that was kind of the grand vision of having great events, building the game, growing the game, putting on events like that, so the young golfers have something to aspire to play in. And so it's a mixture of those big events, and then the sentimental events. And then on top of that, just, you know, community events. There's a ton of office buildings right here, headquarters to a ton of companies, and they're now booking like monthly, you know, outings for their whole company. And
Wow.
they're kind of looking at this place as like a second home for their employees, and a pride of joy for the community. So, it's a confluence of a lot of different types of events. And, it's super exciting to see, where this can evolve into.
Excellent. Sounds outstanding. It really does. And it's interesting too, talking about that with the course superintendents. So far, I've made a few trips in my role here as editor of the magazine, trips out to clubs, to courses. And of course, hey, if I want to know the ins and outs of the golf course, that's who I'm talking to. I'm talking to the superintendent and the director of agronomy. They're the people who know, who are going to give me my best material to then write about for the magazine and for online.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are going to do it for me, for sure. Yeah.
It's to the point now where I call Scotty when I'm at home. I'm like, hey, my faucet's not working. Hey, I can't get my lawnmower to start. Hey, Roberto, what would I do with my car? And they're like, really, Pete? Okay, so do this. And like, so believe me, they know a lot more well beyond the golf course too. These guys are brilliant, in my opinion. So
absolutely. Well, and then all great with superintendents and everything too, but also to mention, I know that I think it's fair to say that having sort of a night golf like this was sort of a long time ambition of you and your business partners and friends, I should say too, as well. Is that right?
Yep.
And tell us about, I guess, kind of why that was important to you, why you thought night golf was something that could catch on here in our country.
Yeah, and I'm sure I touched on it in our last call, but again, it goes back to, I mean, growing the game is the ultimate goal. And what we mean by growing the game is growing the moments, growing the stage. And if you look back in the history of sports, when lights turn on a football stadium, you know, on a baseball field, it transforms the game in terms of interest. And we thought to ourselves, you know, there's kids that are choosing to play football and baseball, basketball for a certain reason and not turning to golf. And, you know, my hypothesis was, you know, there's a much different experience if you're a high school wide receiver in football and you walk into a stadium and it's packed with 2,000 people and the lights are on and the music's playing. You are invigorated. You are, I mean, that the adrenaline going through your body, that's what makes people want to play sports. And golf for some reason doesn't have that, you know, outside of the Phoenix Open and then the elite professional events. If you play in high school golf right now, you know, you'd be lucky to get your mom and dad to show up to walk on these long courses during the day, let alone 2,000 fans. So we figured, in using that as an analogy, if we turned the lights on, much like they turned it on in the NFL and in the Major League Baseball, that stage becomes bigger, the interest becomes bigger, and hopefully those kids that are choosing to play baseball may be like, you know what, that actually looks pretty awesome. I want to hit a 9-iron on hole 18 with 3,000 people watching with the chance to win a tournament and become a legend. And so that was the real motivation behind that. And then to add to that, all the business side of things just made sense, from the ability to play golf at night for working mothers and fathers and you know, and your average golfer. It just opens up so much more freedom for them. But again, it's really about creating the stage, the platform, and get people to be jacked up on golf.
Excellent. So now back on the course itself, what are any other plans? I know we mentioned the event that's coming up with Peacock, but other, I guess, events or leagues, programs that are upcoming that you'd like to mention right now?
Yeah, we're going to make a big announcement next week about our own internal league, or internal, but it's going to be hosted here. There's a lot of energy behind it, a lot of different partners involved, and with partners that share the same vision of building that stage for golfers. So maybe we do this call for the third time a couple months from now, and we can talk about that. I'll be your first three-peat guest.
Hey, there we go. I like that. I love the idea. Yeah.
So we have our own events. We have other events like, you know, the superintendent type of stuff coming through all the time. So there's a lot of activity at the golf course at all times. And then we're obviously still under construction. The pro shop should be done in the next 3 weeks. Then we're going to transition our current pro shop, which is now the restaurant, or will be the restaurant, back to the new pro shop. Start construction on the restaurant clubhouse, the event lawn, which is just dirt sitting here right now. This is all going to be grass, an event lawn, little concert venue, all the bells and whistles, an outdoor bar over here. We're also redoing the driving range. The driving range is in, you know, not the most ideal conditions right now because we're waiting to get construction and there's been so much activity here. But we're putting in hitting bays, you know, top tracer technology, all the bells and whistles there. So there's a lot to be done here on property coming up, and Scotty is still, you know, got his hands full. He's making the course better every single day. So yeah, we got a lot of work ahead of us.
Great. Sounds great, Pete. Hey, congratulations to what you've done so far. It's exciting. It's interesting. It's unique. It's a different approach to the game. And I love anybody who brings out a different philosophy. I don't mean we're just talking about golf, just anything, a different approach to things that will hopefully, that I think will be for the betterment of our world for sure. And I appreciate what you guys are doing with it. It's an exciting approach to the game of golf, and I hope it works out really well for you guys out there.
Well, we appreciate you having us on and talking with us. So again, hopefully we have that 3-peat call.
Yes, I definitely hope to have the 3-peat call. Well, Pete, good luck to you with everything. Appreciate you having me.
All righty.
Thank you. And
thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Pete. Take care.